For centuries, a long and bitter war was fought for the soul of a continent. This wasn't just a series of small fights. It was a struggle for land, for freedom, and for a way of life. In the face of overwhelming odds, great leaders rose to meet the challenge. They were brilliant strategists and fearless warriors, their names now legendary symbols of defiance. Today we look at 5 of these iconic Native American war chiefs. We'll explore their lives, their most cunning strategies, and the deadly battles that defined them. These are the stories of the men who stood against empires. If you enjoy learning the real history of the American West and its most incredible figures, take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Before we get into today's video, I have something special for you. Do you ever watch an old Western and wonder, did that really happen? Well, we've put together a free guide called the Ultimate Wild West Fact Checker's Guide, and it debunks 25 of the biggest myths lying Hollywood shows in their movies. You get it emailed to you instantly when you sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Just head on over to nativejournals.com/subscribe to grab yours and find out the truth about everything from high noon duels to what cowboys really wore. Link is in the description. Number 5. Pontiac, the architect of rebellion. Born around 1720, the Odawa leader Pontiac grew up in a world of balance. His people and other Great Lakes tribes had a strong relationship with the French, built on trade, respect, and military alliance. But when France lost the French and Indian War in 1763, that world was shattered. The British took over, and their new commander, General Jeffrey Amherst, saw the tribes not as allies, but as a conquered people. He stopped the tradition of giving diplomatic gifts, which the tribes saw as a deep insult. Worse, he cut off the trade of gunpowder and ammunition, which they needed not just for fighting, but to hunt and feed their families. The tribes saw this for what it was, an attempt to disarm them before taking their land. Pontiac, a brilliant political operator, saw a wave of spiritual revival sweeping through the tribes and fused it with the people's anger. He crafted a breathtakingly ambitious plan, a secret, coordinated attack on every single British fort in the region. He sent messengers to the Chippewa, the Potawatomi, the Seneca, and many others, forging a massive alliance. He personally led the attack on the most important target, Fort Detroit. In May 1763, he tried to enter the fort with 300 warriors, their weapons hidden under their blankets, planning to strike from within. But the British commander had been warned, and Pontiac was forced to withdraw. The element of surprise was lost, but the fight was just beginning. Pontiac laid siege to Fort Detroit, his forces growing to over 900 warriors. They cut off the fort by land and waged a campaign of fear. The siege reached its climax on July 31st. A British force of about 250 soldiers tried to launch a surprise night attack on Pontiac's camp. But again, Pontiac was ready. He laid a masterful ambush at a small bridge over a creek. As the British crossed in the dark, his warriors opened fire from hidden positions. The attack collapsed into chaos. The British commander was killed, and the creek ran so red it was renamed Bloody Run. Despite this stunning victory, the fort held on, resupplied by water. After 5 months, Pontiac lifted the siege. But his larger war had been a massive success. His alliance had captured 8 of the 11 British forts in the Ohio Valley. The rebellion forced London to issue the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which banned colonial settlement west of the Appalachians to prevent another war. Pontiac had created the first great coalition to challenge an empire, a blueprint that would inspire leaders for generations. Number 4. Tecumseh, the visionary unifier. Tecumseh of the Shawnee was born around 1768 into a world of constant war. The defining moment of his youth was watching his own father, a chief, fall in battle against American frontiersmen. This event lit a fire in Tecumseh that would never go out. He grew into a powerful speaker and a visionary leader with one unshakable belief: that all land was the common property of all tribes, and no single tribe had the right to sell it. His movement was powered by his younger brother, known as the Prophet. After a powerful vision, the prophet urged all native people to reject American ways and return to their ancestral traditions. Thousands flocked to their new village, Prophetstown, in modern-day Indiana. The prophet provided the spiritual soul of the movement. Tecumseh provided its sword. He traveled thousands of miles, turning that spiritual energy into a disciplined military alliance to stand against the United States. But in 1811, while Tecumseh was away recruiting southern tribes, disaster struck. The prophet ignored Tecumseh's warnings and attacked an American force led by William Henry Harrison. The Battle of Tippecanoe was a crushing defeat. The prophet's credibility was shattered, and Prophetstown was burned to the ground. This forced Tecumseh's hand. When the War of 1812 broke out, he allied his warriors with the British, seeing it as his last chance to stop American expansion. His leadership was key in several victories, including the capture of Fort Detroit in 1812. But the tide turned when the Americans won control of Lake Erie, cutting off British supply lines. The British commander, General Proctor, began a hasty retreat into Canada. Tecumseh was furious, seeing the retreat as cowardice. He shamed Proctor into making a stand at the Thames River on October 5, 1813. The British soldiers, demoralized and badly positioned, broke and fled almost immediately. This left Tecumseh and his 500 warriors to face Harrison's army of over 3,500 men alone. They made their stand in a dense swamp, a position that took away the American cavalry's advantage. The fighting was brutal and close. Tecumseh was everywhere, urging his men on, fighting with legendary courage. But the numbers were simply too great. At some point in the chaotic battle, the great Tecumseh was struck down and killed. With his death, the heart of the resistance was gone. The dream of a united independent native nation east of the Mississippi died with him on that battlefield. Number 3, Crazy Horse, the mystical tactician. In the history of great warriors, Crazy Horse of the Oglala Lakota holds a special place. Born around 1840, he was known for his quiet nature, which was a stark contrast to his absolute ferocity in battle. As a young man, he had a vision of a warrior on horseback, floating through a storm of bullets and arrows completely untouched. This vision became his guide. He went into battle with just a single hawk feather in his hair and a stone behind his ear, believing his spiritual power was his true protection. His genius was proven during Red Cloud's War. In 1866, he helped lead a small decoy party that lured 81 U.S. soldiers out of Fort Phil Kearny. The commander, Captain Fetterman, arrogantly disobeyed orders and chased the decoys right into a massive ambush of over 1,000 warriors. The entire U.S. command was wiped out in what was the Army's worst defeat on the plains up to that time. Crazy Horse led from the front by example. Warriors followed him not out of duty, but out of complete faith in his skill and his spirit. This was a style of leadership the American Army simply could not understand. His deadliest battle came during the Great Sioux War of 1876. On June 17th, at the Battle of the Rosebud, he led 1,200 warriors in a surprise attack that halted General Crook's army, preventing it from linking up with another column commanded by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. 8 days later, on June 25th, Custer found the massive Lakota and Cheyenne camp on the banks of the Little Bighorn River. Underestimating his enemy, Custer divided his forces. As part of the village pushed back one attack, Crazy Horse prepared to meet Custer's main force. As Custer moved along the bluffs looking for a place to cross the river and attack the village, Crazy Horse executed the single most decisive move of the battle. He led a massive force of warriors in a huge flanking maneuver, sweeping around and charging Custer's command from the north and west. The attack slammed into Custer's flank, completely surrounding his men and cutting off any chance of retreat. Trapped between Crazy Horse's charge and another force attacking from the south, Custer's command was completely annihilated in less than an hour. It was Crazy Horse's tactical brilliance that sealed their fate. But the victory was short-lived. The U.S. government sent thousands more troops hunting the Lakota through a brutal winter. Facing starvation, Crazy Horse finally led his people to Fort Robinson to surrender in May 1877. But his time there was filled with mistrust. On September 5, 1877, based on false rumors, soldiers tried to lock him in a guardhouse. When he resisted, a soldier struck him with a bayonet, a fatal wound that ended the life of the warrior who could not be beaten in battle. Number 2, Sitting Bull, the spiritual anchor. While Crazy Horse was the perfect warrior, Sitting Bull was the other pillar of Lakota society, the holy man. Born around 1831, his true influence came from his powerful visions and his deep wisdom. He was the political and spiritual heart of the Lakota, who refused to be confined to reservations. The partnership between Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse was the key to the Lakota's greatest victory. Sitting Bull was the moral authority. He was the reason thousands of warriors from different tribes had gathered at the Little Bighorn. Crazy Horse was the supreme military commander who carried out the will of the people. One provided the vision, the other delivered the victory. Sitting Bull's most important contribution came weeks before the battle. He performed the sacred sun dance, making a great personal sacrifice and praying for a vision. After 2 days, he fell into a trance. He saw a multitude of soldiers fallen upside down into the Lakota camp like grasshoppers. A voice told him, "I give you these because they have no ears," meaning the soldiers would not listen to reason and would be destroyed. He shared this powerful vision with the thousands of gathered warriors. It filled them with a sense of divine purpose and absolute confidence. When the battle started, Sitting Bull's role was not to fight. As a principal chief and holy man, his duty was to remain in the camp, protecting the women and children and making medicine for his warriors. He provided the spiritual certainty that made the military victory possible. After the battle, to escape the army's revenge, Sitting Bull led his people into exile in Canada for 4 years. But facing starvation, he was forced to return and surrender in 1881. On the reservation, he became an international celebrity, even touring for a season with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. But in 1890, the government feared his influence over the new ghost dance spiritual movement. They ordered his arrest. On December 15th, Indian Agency police surrounded his cabin. In the chaos that followed, Sitting Bull was shot and killed. His death sent a shockwave of fear across the reservation, leading directly to the tragic Wounded Knee massacre just 2 weeks later. Number 1, Geronimo, the last warrior. The man known as Geronimo was born into the Chiricahua Apache tribe around 1829. His life was changed forever by a horrific event. While he was away on a trading trip, Mexican soldiers attacked his camp and massacred the women and children, including his mother, his wife, and his 3 young children. This event ignited in Geronimo a burning need for vengeance that would drive him for the next 30 years. He said that in his grief, he heard a voice promise him that no gun would ever kill him. He became the most feared Apache raider on both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border. It was the Mexican soldiers themselves who gave him his name, crying out Geronimo, Spanish for Jerome, as he charged them with only a knife, seemingly immune to their bullets. Geronimo did not lead vast armies. His was a war of survival, a hit-and-run fight waged by a small, fast-moving band against the might of 2 nations. They knew every canyon and waterhole in the harsh desert, allowing them to strike without warning and vanish without a trace. His final and most famous campaign began in May 1885, when he fled the San Carlos Reservation with a small band of 35 men and about 100 women and children. This started one of the largest manhunts in American history. The U.S. Army sent 5,000 soldiers, nearly a quarter of its total strength, plus 500 Apache scouts to hunt him. The Mexican Army sent another 3,000 troops. For 16 months, Geronimo's tiny band, which eventually shrunk to just 38 men, women, and children, led this massive force on an incredible chase across thousands of miles of rugged mountains. But by 1886, his people were exhausted. On September 4th, Geronimo surrendered for the last time. He was the last Native American leader to formally capitulate to the United States military, an act that marked the end of the Indian Wars. He was promised a return to his homeland, but it was a lie. He and his followers were shipped as prisoners of war to Florida, then Alabama, and finally to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He never saw his home again. In a strange twist, he spent his final years as a celebrity, appearing at World's Fairs and even in a presidential inaugural parade. He died in 1909, still a prisoner of war. It's said that on his deathbed, he told his nephew, "I should have never surrendered. I should have fought until I was the last man alive." From the grand alliances of Pontiac to the desperate survival of Geronimo, these 5 leaders show the incredible evolution of native resistance. Though they could not stop the tide of history, they achieved a lasting victory in their legacy. They proved that they were not passive victims, but brilliant and determined leaders fighting for their people, their land, and their freedom. Of these 5 incredible leaders, whose story stands out to you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you for watching.